Let's bring in News Corp senior writer Patrick Carlyon. Patrick, welcome to the program. Let's start with business and industry groups preparing to launch what could be the largest third-party election campaign in Australia's political history amid fears of a hung parliament. The groups are expected to launch campaigns to try and influence swing voters in what is being called one of the most crucial elections of our time. Patrick, finally we're seeing these business groups actually advocate for their own interests, for the interests of their shareholders, their staff, other stakeholders, as opposed to being tied up in all these social woke issues they normally like to involve themselves in. This is actually about how these policies will impact the running of their business.
Yeah, look, this is fascinating because the data is so specific now. You can have these groups, whether it's unions or business groups, actually targeting specific polling booths. And they can work out apprentices live near that polling booth, and a lot of people with negative gearing investments live near that polling booth. And so you're going to have this very targeted micro campaign for an election where nobody knows the result. It's all based on the fact that the ALP's primary vote is so soft at the moment. These sort of micro strategies in very targeted areas could have a real impact on the result.
What do you say to fears that this is akin to buying an election? You're going to have the top end of town determining how people vote. Do you buy that? Because we know how much the unions spend in this arena.
That's right. Look. Those fears are warranted perhaps in the sense that they're going to be in the game in a way that they haven't been in the game before. And it's because of the data, it's because of the technology. They will be very targeted, and you'll see them really campaign hard in very, very specific areas in a way that they haven't before. And you can argue, yes, they're going to have more sway potentially, but that's it's a product of the technologies. The world is moving forward slowly.
Indeed it is, and Robert Gobleson has written a fascinating piece in the Australian newspaper about Labor's new unrealised gains tax, a tax which he calls one of the most vicious taxes ever conceived by an Australian government. This tax will not be indexed, and as Gobleson writes, the biggest victims will be those trying to develop a new business and asking for capital to help. Nobody will invest if they have to sell assets to pay for the unrealised gains tax, and if there is a later loss, they must wait for capital profits to get the money back. Patrick, what happened to Labor's election promise? I'm sure I remember something back in 2022 about no new taxes.
Yes, vaguely, yes. Look, Robert's onto something here. I mean, very few countries in the world have taxes on unrealised profits. And so they're basically potentially going to ask for you to pay for money that you actually don't have, which will force people to, businesses to sell assets, investors to sell things merely to pay the tax. It's not fair. It's anti-aspirational, it's anti-innovation, and it's anti-productive in the sense that you want investment, and this is anti-investment.
It is definitely anti-investment, and when you've already got an environment of high regulation, high tax, it's just another reason for people to invest elsewhere. And we know what's happening in the US. An environment's been created there that is very pro-investment. So if you're a big multinational, you've got to wonder why you would invest in Australia at with the current conditions. Let's talk about Victoria. The state is buckling under the weight of record debt, and Premier Jacinta Allen seems to be preoccupied with other priorities. Here's what she's been posting on X. She wrote, "I want to send a message to every LGBTIQ plus Victorian in our state today. I know that right now you might look at the world with fear and uncertainty, fear for your community, fear for your safety, fear for a future that might end up looking a lot more like the past. But I want you to know this. In Victoria, you have a government and a premier who believes in equality and believes in you." Oh, dear me. Now, she has been ratioed to hell and back on X for that incoherent virtue signalling. That basically means, Patrick, that she has been flooded with negative responses, people taking her to task for what she has written there, her failure to stand up for women's rights, women's spaces. After all, Victoria is a place where we have a male sexual predator identifying as a woman in a woman's prison.
That's right.
I mean, this is the sort of madness that the rest of the world can only imagine. It's happening in Victoria.
Yeah, look, I think most people, Victorians, Australians, the world, are sick of the woke sort of ideology. And I think this is sort of presented as a heartfelt message of love. It's actually very cynical, I think. It's actually saying, yeah, I feel your fears. You have reasons to be fearful. We might go back to what was a long time ago. And that's very unhelpful.
And why? Because Donald Trump has said take the pronouns out of your email address if you're a government employee. That's what's requiring the Victorian Premier down here to...
Look, there's been no hate-related incident in Victoria that prompted this. This comes out of nowhere, and I would expect that the negative sort of reviews, as you say, would continue because it's misplaced right now.